Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Open Mind podcast. I am one of your hosts, Ryan Tabaz, located in Rome, Italy, and your other co-host is Taylor Sears.
Hello.
Where are you at today, Taylor?
Los Angeles, California.
Yeah, it's looking mighty sunny early in the day. It's a late afternoon over here in Europe, in Italy. Taylor, are you excited for launching this baby that we have created?
I'm very excited, especially because a lot of our conversations that we have outside of here have to do with these types of topics that people are very sensitive to talk about, and a lot of the times you can't talk to people about it because they will either get upset or offended, or they have no concept of actually being open to these things. So I'm very excited.
That is awesome. We are going to be focusing on topics that aren't talked about a lot in our day of age. Topics like mental health, specifically with men, suicide, and the future. Where do we go as a society in this absolute chaotic universe that we're living in now? And we actually want to bring in guests for future episodes, experts. We want to interact with you guys, the listeners, because really that is what this is all about. We want to address your problems, your friends' problems, and our goal is really for you guys to learn at least one thing from every episode. And to start, we have an interesting piece of research that came out this month from
Someone is mad down on the street.
Probably the ambulance with a carabinieri.
Oh, it's an ambulance. Okay, wait,
well,
before we start the topic, since there's voice or since there's noise, why don't you tell us a little about Italy?
Okay, well, I gotta say, so far, Rome really feels like a place that I want to live in, for the rest of my life. It's kind of hard to explain. It's obviously pretty hot right now, this time of year, late August, but I mean, the food is incredible. The people, though, it's a little bit of an adjustment trying to pick up a new language in 7 days so far. It's pretty fun. You're walking down the street and you hear two old guys screaming at each other in Italian, but they're not actually screaming at each other. They're just having a normal conversation, really passionate. And yeah, I mean, it just feels like an interesting place to live in. Every day is something new, and I love that. There's also a siesta, kind of what you would expect in Spain. Between the hours of 1 and 3, everything closes. Every store is closed, for a break. Most people like to take a nap around that time, but here at the university, they were saying most students don't do that because they're not used to it. So they usually just have to put some headphones in and stay quiet, but just rest for a couple hours. So yeah, that's been a little bit of an adjustment. Hopefully I can start to take some naps though, because in this heat kind of sounds a little nice. And it's actually, there's other things too. When you say in the States, you want to get grab a cup of coffee with someone, you kind of go grab a cup, nice. You go to Starbucks, you get a grande, maybe a venti if you're experienced. And most people will grab it, maybe chat for a bit, get on a run, or most people are just grabbing their coffee and going to work. Here in Italy, the coffees are this big, like espresso shots, and you sit at the table for an hour talking to people, and it's not focused on
this
when
is my coffee.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be much smaller than that. But the real focus is on the conversation and not the act of drinking, the coffee. So it's things like that are really eye-opening in a way. And it's like, why in the United States do we run the next thing? Like, like our lives are depending on it. Why don't we just take our time and slow down? Because life moves really fast, especially if you're just racing through it, trying to get through your day.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of statistics and research behind like different countries and the way that they run and the way that people socialize and their own mental health, the way that that's affected. I'm sure like if you saw it, the United States probably has a lot higher rates of exactly what we're talking about, like suicide or mental health issues and depression, anxiety. Like I'm sure they have a lot more here than they do in Italy if you looked at the statistics, but I mean, who knows?
That's a good segue, though, into the topic of today's podcast. Taylor, experienced podcaster already. I came across this research that was published this month, and it's quite fascinating. It's titled "Saliva Microbiome, Dietary, and Genetic Markers Are Associated with Suicidal Ideation in University Students."
Can you explain that in a more simple way so people may understand better?
So, obviously, university students are at risk, and young adults especially are at risk of, mental health issues and sadly committing suicide. Young people commit suicide at much higher rates than any other age group of people.
They're more susceptible.
And, yeah, and for those of you who come from Palos Verdes that are listening, shout out to you guys for supporting us. But we all know that our high school, our community has a long history of kids that have decided to take their own life. And it's gotten to the point for me, and I think Taylor, you're in agreement. You agree with me on this as well, that someone has to do something about this. Like, we can't just keep going to services every 2 years for another high school student that couldn't bear to live another day on this earth, because this earth is amazing. Like, the lows that you can have in life are tough. I've been there. Everyone's been there. But for every low you have, there's a high that's coming. It's peaks and there's valleys, but you just gotta focus on the peaks. Push through. And I think opening up conversation, especially with young men, about this stuff, talking about your feelings, getting in circles, is going to be really, really helpful. And that's what you and I are trying to do, right?
Yeah. I mean, just exploring the actual emotions and thoughts that people have that lead to them to these thoughts. Like, the easiest thing for them to do is just talk about what they're feeling, and like communication and getting help. Like, you have to express the way that you're feeling in order to feel any different about something. If you hold it inside, you're never going to feel any different about it. So yeah, it's definitely something that people need to be educated on. Also we can talk about this on another podcast, but with men, like, being vulnerable with each other and being able to talk about how you're feeling, like, that is an issue altogether, that men will not be vulnerable with their own feelings. And they're going to keep holding those things inside of them until it just eats them apart. And if people were educated to know that speaking about how you're feeling, getting help, like, those things are okay. Getting help is something that is looked at so negatively. Like, going to therapy tells you that you have a problem. Getting help from someone, talking to someone about your issues, tells you that you have a problem. But the thing is, if you do have a problem, you need to speak about it so you can fix it, instead of sitting there and letting people label you, say that you have this issue, you have this issue. But if you're not doing anything about it, then you're accepting that you have that issue.
Mm-hmm. So the article starts by including the fact that suicide is the second leading cause of death in individuals between the ages of 10 to 34 in the United States. So right away, that's enough to open up this issue and start to talk about it. Now, this study compared 47 university students who admitted to having suicidal ideation, aka thoughts of wanting to end their own life, and 325 students who did not have those thoughts. And remarkably, the study found that for those students who had those thoughts, they had a higher prevalence of bacteria in their saliva, whereas the kids who did not have thoughts had no bacteria in their saliva. Now, the study went on to address why this may be, and diet is definitely one of the reasons that it may be, and genetics is the other one. It's really a eye-opening study as to the connection between your body and your mind. Generally, though, your brain releases bacteria throughout your body as a function of your central and peripheral nervous system. So you're basically anything you feel, your sensory motor complex, cortex, all of that is connected. Your brain can release bacteria in certain parts of your body to help you basically do all your functions that you in your life. Now, the study went on to assess diet, and there has been research in the past, you may know, that diet has a major impact on your mental health.
Wait, can I go into detail about this?
Yes, please.
Okay, so there are multiple studies behind gut and brain connection. And if your gut is off, your whole entire endocrine system, your mental health system, all of that can be thrown off if you have a offset of bacteria inside of your gut. So if people are starting to produce this bacteria that is produced, can you go a little bit more into detail about how like this bacteria is produced in order to cause like these thoughts? Because this bacteria is going into the gut, and then the gut is connected to the neurological connections in our brain, and it gives thoughts of suicide. But how exactly does this work?
There are two structures in your brain that are really, really important in this mind to gut kind of axis, right? And it would be the amygdala and the hippocampus. The amygdala is responsible for your fight or flight, how you respond in situations of fear, also when you're hungry, and also when you're ready to fornicate. All the F's right there. The hippocampus is the central control for your endocrine system, which you alluded to earlier. Now, your endocrine system is basically all of your hormones. And, you have different glands throughout your body. You have glands right here in your mouth.
Yes.
Which produce your saliva. So for people who have poor mental health, whether it be because of a poor diet, whether it be because of genetics, or just because, maybe trauma has led them to having depression, this activates their hippocampus in certain ways, which secretes this bacteria into your saliva. So this study opens up a whole new way to address major depressive disorder from a psychopharmacological standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
basically, we can find new treatments for people with depression.
Okay, so I wanted to just make a comment about the diet part of it.
Mm-hmm.
In this study that they were trying to find the control subjects, and they wanted to see the way that diet obviously affected people, the way that sleep affected people, their genetics, and they did all that research. And what they found behind diet was that there is a very like prominent connection between fast food and suicidal attempts. And people that did eat fast food, there was a much higher percentage of suicide attempts than there were in people that were not eating fast food very often. And it said that this is because of a systematic inflammation, oxidative stress, and decreased brain plasticity, which all of those things are connected to the gut. If you
Mm-hmm.
have inflammation in your gut, if you have if you are stressed, your gut bacteria is going to be off. Like all of these different things, it's not even all about fast food either. Like of course, the food that you're putting in your body, if you're not putting in the right nutrients, your body's not going to be happy. Your mind's not going to be happy either.
Well, I mean, I think this kind of, the way I look at it is this: your body has a mind of its own, like
Mm-hmm.
your body can punish you for feeding it ultra processed foods by
Mm-hmm.
basically leading you down a depressed state. And,
Yeah.
it lowers plasticity as well. So it kind of just causes you to go in this loop of, dark thoughts. And once you lose your ability to change your own mind, it's very hard to save you at that point.
Yeah. I can also say very personally, people get into these mindsets where there's so many eating disorders, and there's like binge eating disorders, and there's all these disorders that are also connected to depression, anxiety. Like people will eat their feelings away. And when you're already at this mental state where you are already mentally unstable and there's already things going on in your brain that are unbalanced, and you're putting bad food into your body, it's going to make it so much worse. And from like personal experience, I work out and I try to live a healthy lifestyle. And if I'm putting crap in my body all the time, I'm not going to be able to do my daily activities the way that I can. And honestly, that turns me into a less productive person, and also my mental health, I can feel it decreasing when I'm not eating healthy.
Yeah, that's insane. That makes me think of something that I actually listened to today, and I was seeing a clip of an interview of this man who was 100 years old, and he is so present in the moment. His thoughts are so clear in his speech, and it's really inspiring. And he was talking about how he was running marathons in his 80s and 90s, and he's an 100-year-old man. And he said the key to his longevity and his persistence on this planet was a healthy diet.
Yeah.
And his was specifically plant-based, and maybe that is one point for the vegans there, but it really just shows how important your life is. I mean, America has a huge problem with obesity and heart disease as major killers of people. So maybe the answer to all of our problems is right there in front of us on our plate.
Yeah. And it is really sad to say, but like pharmaceuticals and unhealthy food they play hand in hand. Like People with depression, they're taking depression pills, anxiety pills, they're taking all these medications. And a lot of it is caused by the food that they're buying from the store. And the food that they're buying from the store, if you look at the store, you go to the produce aisle, and all on the sides of the store, which is like when you walk in the store, do you go to the sides or are you going to go to the middle where all the aisles are that people are looking at? Like you most likely go to all the aisles and walk up and down the aisles, and then you're going to go to the produce. But the produce part is way more expensive than anything else in the middle of the store where everything is processed. And these things that are processed are causing people to become obese, to get heart disease, to have cancer. Like it works hand in hand. And if people were able to see that and recognize that it's not just ourselves that are influencing ourselves into becoming in this depressive state, unhealthy state, it's also the government, or let's say the educators that are educating people on how eating healthy can actually help your mental health. And also, they're giving us pills to suppress the situation, but what are they doing to prevent suicide? They have a hotline for suicide, but what are they actually doing to educate people on how to get help for suicide? Not just calling someone, but how to prevent having suicidal thoughts. But they don't do that. People don't tell you how to prevent having suicidal thoughts. If we were able to actually prevent the actual thoughts from coming to people's minds, instead of trying to stop people from having those thoughts, then we wouldn't have this issue. But we're set up to get into this mindset that it's okay. Like, it is okay to have depression and anxiety. Like, that is something that people have and they need to deal with. It's okay. It's not a problem. But also, it's not okay to sit in it and not do anything about it and not try to prevent those things from even happening at all. Like, we need to stop these things from happening at all. And we're not. We're just trying to suppress them.
Yeah. That's a good point. Made a lot of good points there. I this kind of goes back to another thing, and the prices of food is a big issue in the United States, especially. And I want to preface this by saying I am 100% pro capitalism. I think it allows people to be free in the most beautiful way, to where you can do whatever you want to do in your heart and, make money from it. You can follow your passions and get paid, pretty much.
Yeah.
However, at the other end of that is the greed that has led us to this issue that we face today. For example, these potato chips right here, these are made in Asia using very minimally paid laborers, using very poorly made ingredients, and it's super cheap. Do you know why? So our government can profit off of it.
And you know what's funny too? Do you think people in Asia are eating Lay's like we are in the United States? Probably not.
No.
Yeah.
I disagree. Yeah, you're probably right there. Hey, you were talking about how, Italy is socialist. It's not socialist, but it is definitely more socially democratic with their policies. And the fact that they do not have such a gap between the price of healthier foods and unhealthier foods leads to a more balanced society that can live longer and, not die from heart disease, not want to commit suicide.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, I mean, there are just so many issues, not even suicide or health mental health related, that if we had education and preventative measures, and if we actually put in time instead of researching the reasons for things and how to fix things, why don't we research the reasons for things and then find out how to prevent them?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think having a solution for things is great, and obviously there are things that we need solutions for now that like we can't change, like for example mental health issues, giving people like these pills and like suppressing their issues. Are we ever going to come to a point where we actually do solve this issue?
Well, I mean, hopefully with the findings of this study, we can start to turn a corner, because
Mm-hmm.
we're going to take a whole new approach at solving these, you know, psychiatric disorders such as depression. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we have a lot of topics I know that we're interested to talk about moving forward, especially solutions to psychiatric disorders, psychiatric conditions. So I don't want to get too far into that, but we do have a lot of information on psychedelics that we want to talk about moving forward,
Mm-hmm.
and how they can help. But yeah, I mean, do you have any more thoughts on this study itself?
um I
Because
do actually have, I had one thing I did want to talk about, because in the study it talked about how it was, hold on, let me check. It said, okay, so people with sleep issues, they found connections between sleep issues and suicidal ideation as well. And I want to say that a lot of the times when people have sleep issues, there's an underlying cause for it, such as maybe someone had too much caffeine, or, you know, possibly, I don't know, they might be sick. But a lot of people that don't sleep, it's because they have constant things running through their mind, constant thoughts, and they don't slow down and take a look at their life and process what is actually going on in their situation and their life. And that's what we were talking about before. Like in Italy, you say people take it slower and they talk to each other, and, you know, they take their time with their life, and because life is short. But if people are constantly going, when they lay down to sleep, all these thoughts are going to be going through their mind. And honestly, a lot of the thoughts that people have, I have these thoughts too, are like the thoughts that you don't think about when you get deep in your mind and you have those deep thoughts and bad thoughts that you might not have during the day because you're distracted. As soon as you lay down on your pillow, if you didn't talk about those thoughts you were having with anyone, it's just going to get worse and worse. And
mm-hmm,
that's exactly why when you're not sleeping, you're having these thoughts. That's why it can lead to suicidal ideation, because because you don't, you aren't able to process those thoughts that you're having and able to talk about those thoughts that you're having. And I just think that's why communication is so important. Like that is the start to how to fix a lot of these issues, is just people talking to each other. That's how these researches became. Like people started talking to each other and realizing that there are connections between these thoughts. So if people were able to just talk to each other, try to figure out their own issues that are going on, I'm sure people will be able to find a solution, because one size does not fit all. They may find something to help some people that have suicidal thoughts, that have depression, anxiety. They may find one way to help people with that, but not everyone's the same. So
mm-hmm.
if we were able to just educate people on communicating and talking and doing your own research on how to improve your mental health, instead of going to other people and listening to what they have to say and just doing what other people say, do your own research, figure out what works for you, because that is what will actually change as everyone as a whole. Is if everyone, I mean, yes, talking to other people helps, but really figuring out what works for yourself and doing your own work too can really help.
Well said, Taylor.
Thank you.
So that kind of leads me into something we want to do here. We want to create a culture, though, of people who are willing to be open about their problems. And not only that, we're going to be talking about a lot of topics in our modern society that are not discussed to the full extent that covers all sides. And we need to bring in as many voices as possible to find the truth. You know what I mean? Like, everyone has their own story, their own narrative going on in their own mind. But though the points in between that people have in common that link people together, that right there is what is true. And we need to start focusing on that if we want to, if we want to survive this semi-apocalyptic world that we live in.
Yeah. And I think we also need to sit back and remember that, like I was saying, people, when they have these issues, they're looked at as they have a problem and there's something wrong with them. But the thing is, we can't look at it that way anymore. We can't look at it as someone has a problem and someone has an issue and they're a problem, like the people that do end up, killing themselves are the people that don't feel like they have a place. People that feel like other people don't see them. But we need to be able to have a community or a culture that people actually accept that people will have these issues. And if they talk about it, we are all here to just hear it and have an open mind about it and possibly be able to help them or even help yourself. When you hear someone else having, something that is similar to your situation or similar to someone that like, that just shows that you're not alone in these thoughts, and it actually is something important. You're not no one's insignificant. Insignificant. And any thoughts people are having are not insignificant either. Every single thought that you have, there's a reason for that thought. And that's why it's important to share it, because some people may need to hear what you have to say as well. Is that
all right? Yeah, no,
sorry, I go on tangents.
I agree with what you said. We want to create a space for people to come to us with their problems or their friends' problems, so we can do our best to try to help them. But we know that being anonymous is a very important part of that. So on our Instagram account, which is at insert Instagram right here, we're going to have a Google form in our description with an open space for people to talk about anonymously, or, if you feel like you want to be specific, if you think, a problem is the point where you need to be more specific, go for it. But we're going to create a space for you to come to us with your problems if you don't know what to do, and it will be 100% anonymous. So you will be 100% protected, but we want you to know that we are here thinking about you and on your side, and we are offering to help in any way that we can.
Our Instagram is also going to be a resource for people to send in their own thoughts about things that they may want to hear us talk about or do more research on and get deep into certain topics that people may not be comfortable talking about. And we will take any recommendations, any types of things that, people may want to hear about and they may be scared. I wanted to mention as well that there is a suicide hotline that was created about 2 months ago, actually. It is 988. And this is so, if you don't have anyone to talk to or you feel lost and you need to talk to someone, please call this hotline, because one call isn't going to kill you. And not calling may end up killing you. So please just call the hotline if you can do anything. And these people, they don't know who you are. All they want to do is help. So 988 is the number in case you need to talk to someone.
Amazing. All right. Well, thank you so much for, listening all the way to the end. So I want to thank you guys so much. And yeah, Taylor, amazing stuff. Until next time.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening.